let's bring in Chris Johnston, our Leafs and NHL reporter on Sportsnet. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Not going to spend all morning talking about the Leafs captaincy, so don't worry about it. But I do find this.
Thank God.
I find this. This is an interesting thing. Like there is, it's the type of thing that people who are looking for stuff, people who are poking in the embers of the fire, people who are looking for stuff to stir up stuff or look, it's red meat for them. And I think the Leafs have done a really smart and in some ways I think calculated thing here in naming these three guys as alternates and not giving a letter to Auston Matthews.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the one thing, Lou Lamoriello's moved on as the GM of this team. Guys can have beards again, but, some of what he put in place, it will remain. And I think that the organization has done all it can, really to try to protect some of the young players that have entered this league as stars on the Leafs. And, their view, honestly, is just why add more to Auston Matthews' plate? I mean, he's going to be their top-line center this year. He's going to be the focus of every opponent that they play. He's going to play more minutes. He's going to be more on the power play. He's expected to be one of the best players in the league. And, just doing anything extra that draws attention, I feel like they don't see it as being necessary. And I don't think it's like a starter course to him one day being the captain or not. It's not incumbent that he has to wear an A before wearing a C or anything along those lines. So, I don't think it should be tied too closely to that discussion. And, the fact is that they've got more experienced teammates that, can traditionally wear those letters and, handle, I guess, some of the responsibility behind the scenes that comes with it.
I think it's also, and again, you're right. You're not going to sort of get into competition for it. But, if I'm looking at it from the point of view of a guy like Morgan Riley, for example, I mean, I think in the other cases, it's obvious. But to me, and I know Morgan wore the A last year as well, but it's a real kind of vote of confidence in him as well, isn't it? I mean, vote of confidence isn't the right word, but it's an indication. He sometimes gets lost when we talk about the important players on this team, but I think it's an indication of his place within the organization as well, and maybe a reminder of it to people.
Well, for sure, and look, he had a fantastic season last year. Took his game to another level, and I think he is close to being a number one defenseman, not just in title but in his performance as the Leafs have had in some time, and so he is part of that young core. He just happened to come in a little bit before the Shanna plan took place, but he's of the same generation as the guys that are expected to carry this team to big heights, and he's kind of the leader within that leadership group. I think that him and Auston Matthews have a solid relationship, and he's just played more years in the league. So the fact he wore it last year and has it again, I do think that sort of confirms the progression he's taken, and that he's a huge part of whatever happens this year for the Leafs.
Let's talk about the other situation with the Leafs, the William Nylander's contract. It's obvious Tyler Ennis is going to get a little bit of a break here. But, Chris, what's your read in that situation? I think we all know where this is going to go. And, Gord Stellick made an interesting point the other day because, like a lot of people, my only concern in this is, look, it's going to get done eventually. My only concern is, how does Mike Babcock handle this situation? Does, he get upset if this drags on? And Stellick made a good point that I've overlooked and some other people have overlooked, I think, as well. As he said, look, if this gets resolved with the 5 or 6 year contract, you're not going to hold any. I mean, you're going to have that player for 5 or 6 years. Probably the last thing you're going to do is, quote unquote, punish the guy the first day he's back in camp.
Yeah, and, I was a little surprised yesterday. I thought Mike Babcock held back on it. And, he's not afraid to kind of, just get a little jab in here or there when he feels it necessary. And I thought maybe that might be what happens with William Nylander, just because he's not here. And but the coach was pretty muted. And, I think there's a lot of ways this can go. I mean, the discussion doesn't have as much urgency today as they take the ice for the first time. But, even just a week or 10 days from now when, by that point, the exhibition schedule will be winding down. If it remains at a stalemate and he's not in camp, I think it's a little bit different of a discussion. But William Nylander, even though at times he's certainly been on a short leash, I think that they recognize there's a real nice pairing there with Austin Matthews, and I don't see any sort of reciprocal sort of effect on him if he just misses a couple days. And so far anyway, Mike hasn't shown any frustration at the fact. And I think even the fact there's 8 guys right now in the exact same situation league wide, waiting for their second NHL contracts, kind of makes it a little bit easier. It's not one player putting himself above anything. I mean, I think it is a little bit part of a wider CBA issue that's developing here around the league.